and welcome back to the channel. The 1960s were a transitional decade for cinema. In the USA alone, movies went from Where the Boys Are to Bob and Carol and Ted and Alice. From Cinderfella to The Producers. And from Flaming Star to The Wild Bunch, it was, by all measures, a hell of a decade. So I thought for this video I'd pick one interesting movie per year from 1960 to 1969 for this two-part video. The four criteria I've got for these movies are pretty simple. They have to be released in the year mentioned. They have to be part of the style and the zeitgeist of the 1960s. They have to have a modern contemporary setting. And they have to be worth checking out. So let's start with the obvious choice for 1960. In 1960, La Dolce Vita hit the cinema like a bomb. In fact, according to Mark Harris's book, Scenes from a Revolution, The Birth of the New Hollywood, among cinephiles you were either a La Dolce Vita guy or you were a stand for Michelangelo Antonioni's La Ventura. There were arguments about which one was better and which one was more representative of Italian cinema, La Dolce Vita or La Ventura. Cinephiles felt really strongly about it at the time. Now, I haven't seen La Ventura yet, but I will this year. For me, La Dolce Vita has already got a bit of a head start because it added a word to the English language. The photographer who hangs around with Marcello, the Marcello Mastroianni character, is called paparazzo, and the word evolved into paparazzi and became part of the lexicon when we're talking about celebrity. This 3-hour epic is broken down into a prologue, 7 major episodes over 7 days and nights, an intermezzo and an epilogue. A gossip magazine journalist, Marcello Rubini, iconically played by Marcello Mastroianni, travels through the sweet life of Rome, looking for love but never quite finding it. The Dolce Vita is such an overwhelming movie experience that my memories of it bring it back to me as moments. Anita Ekberg in the Trevi Fountain, the statue of Jesus being carried by a helicopter, Marcello and Maddalena played by Anuka Mi in the sex worker's apartment, the horrifying scene when Steiner's wife walks to their apartment surrounded by journalists, unaware of what's waiting for her. Marcello taking his father to a cabaret. There are just so many unique, distinct moments of cinema in this one film. For me, watching La Dolce Vita is not quite like seeing other movies. From Nino Rota's iconic score through the genius of Fellini's direction, that strange passive charisma of Marcello Mastroianni, and the character Marcello's quest for meaning and love, it's a one-off masterpiece. I've seen it twice so far and I reckon I'm due for a third viewing. It really is a movie that always delights me and overwhelms me at the same time. Bravery comes in different packages. It's brave for a British film studio to invest £153,000 in 1961 in a movie demanding the decriminalisation of homosexuality. It took guts to do that. At the time, male homosexuality was illegal and it would remain so until 1967. In Victim, Dirk Bogarde plays Melville Farr, a barrister in Queen's Counsel with a thriving legal practice, and a wife, Laura, played by Sylvia Sims. One day, Farr is approached multiple times by a young man, Bennett, played by Peter McHenry, with whom he had a tentative relationship. Thinking the young man is trying to blackmail him, Farr rebuffs him, but it's the young man who's being blackmailed. He has stolen money from his employer to pay his blackmailer, and he's come to ask Farr for help. And this ends in tragedy for the young man. At a moral crisis, Farr decides to take on the blackmailers and risk everything he has. At the time Victim was made, Dirk Bogarde was one of the most successful movie actors in Britain. He played romantic leads, he was a deft-handed comedy, and he was a good dramatic actor. He was also a closeted gay man. Bogarde took the risk of playing a man trying to repress his own sexuality in this tough and gritty drama. Bogarde's movie career tanked because he made this film. Victim doesn't sit exactly into any one genre. It can be seen as a crime drama, but it also has some of the same plot beats as a film noir. What it does do, in no uncertain terms, is show how criminalising the lives of LGBTQI plus people attracts predators and leads to untold human misery. It shows how the lives of black male men were destroyed by these hideous laws. Filmed in beautiful black and white, Victim is a tough, brave film. And it's one of those movies that's an important step on a cultural path to acceptance and inclusion. It's hard to say you like a movie like this, but you can recognise its importance, its courage, and the fact that it said things that needed to be said at the time. And from all accounts, it was influential in having those laws changed in 1967. Dino Risi's energetic road movie Il Sorpasso should be better known than it is. Also known as The Easy Life, it sits in a short-lived genre called commedia all'italiana, comedy Italian style. These comedies were satirical, risque and edgy, addressing issues like divorce, contraception and infidelity, which the Catholic Church disapproved of. Movies like Big Deal on Madonna Street, and strangely, these comedies were also known for their sadness and sense of regret. But Dino Risi's simple, energetic and emotionally complex Il Sorpasso is, for me, the best of them. On a very hot summer's day during a national holiday, a man in a sports car, Bruno, played by Vittorio Gassman, meets a younger man, Roberto, played by Jean-Louis Trintignant, who lets him use his phone. Bruno is ebullient, outgoing, raunchy, a braggart and cheeky. Roberto is a shy, unworldly man who is studying for his law exams. After letting Bruno use his phone, Roberto is enticed out of his apartment and onto the highway with the promise of lunch. As they drive out of Rome and into the countryside, they form a strange, fast friendship. Over the 2 days of the national holiday, they visit Roberto's family's villa in the countryside, where Bruno shows Roberto that his idyllic childhood memories of the place may not have been as he remembers them. They also visit Bruno's ex-wife and his teenage daughter, played by Catherine Spark, who is about to marry a much older man. It's there we find out Bruno's carefree life isn't what Roberto thought it was. Filmed in Lazio and Tuscany, Il Sorpasso is aided by Risi's dynamic camera work, a solid score by Riz Ortolani, and the use of contemporary Italian pop songs, mostly by Peppino Di Capri. Vittorio Gassman is amazing as the bawdy, shameless Bruno, and Trintignant's Roberto is an intelligent, sensitive young man whose thoughts we sometimes hear. Props also go to Luciana Agiolillo as Bruno's wife, and she's extremely good in the movie as well. Il Sorpasso is one of the great hidden gem road movies of the 60s. It's a sun-soaked, music-filled odyssey as Bruno's Lancia Aurelia rockets down the country roads, driven recklessly as the older man regales Roberto of stories of his sexual conquests and his opinions on everything from politics to L'Avventura. It's a movie that's full of energy and regret and passion. There's a Criterion edition of it that's worth every cent. It could only be made in Italy in the 1960s at a time when society was moving from a primarily agrarian and agricultural basis to cities, businesses and factories. And that transition is very much reflected in the way this movie plays out. It's one you should definitely have a look at. First of all, this one has a great title. Any movie title you can think of is improved by the addition of Go to Hell Bastards at the end of the title. Bambi, Go to Hell Bastards. Emmanuel, Go to Hell Bastards. Goodfellas, Go to Hell Bastards. It works. This movie was directed by Seijun Suzuki, who gave us Tokyo Drifter, Branded to Kill and Pistol Opera, so you know it's good. Starring the strangely chipmunk-cheeked Joe Shishido, who actually had cheek implants to make himself more attractive. This movie is a solid crime flick. In it, Shishido plays a private detective called Tajima, who infiltrates a gang of gun smugglers in Tokyo to find out who's running the gang, which is muscling in on the two existing local gun-running gangs. Shishido is charismatic as Tajima. We get a lot of groovy Showa-era nightclubs and gangsters and 1960s Tokyo locations. There are musical cabaret numbers and beautiful women and shootouts in industrial locations, which were a lot easier to access at night. A really nasty trap involving fuel oil in a basement under a nightclub, and a well-dressed and kind of casual and stylish protagonist. Nikatsu Studios pumped out a lot of these gangster movies, but this one, like Tokyo Drifter and Branded to Kill, shows us Suzuki's eye for framing shots and stylizing the nightlife of Tokyo, and it gives it a really cool 1960s vibe. I go through phases when I'm really big on Japanese gangster films of a certain era, and this is one of my go-tos for that. It is peak 1960s Japanese cinema. This is one of the best action comedies of the 1960s, and it doesn't get a lot of love these days. Starring Jean-Paul Belmondo and Francois Dorliac, it is pedal-to-the-metal action from start to finish, with a male star who did most of his own stunts. Belmondo plays an airman called Adrian, who's starting an 8-day leave from duties, which he intends to spend with his fiancée Agnes, played by Francois Dorliac. He arrives at the museum where she works in time to see her kidnapped. At the same time, a precious Amazon native statue is stolen. Adrian chases the kidnappers and the drugged Agnes to Rio de Janeiro. He gets the girl back and follows the thieves to get the statue back. Long before Tom Cruise did his own stunts, watching Belmondo do some crazy things on wires above building sites and leaping from one place to another is a lot of fun. L'Homme de Rio is an action film as energetic as a Warner Brothers cartoon. Steven Spielberg once said that he'd seen the movie 9 times, and this movie's influence on the antics of Indiana Jones is quite obvious. In the cast we also get Jean Servais from Rafifi and Adolfo Celli, who had just played Emilio Largo in Thunderball. There's a great score by Georges Delerue. At the time, France was making a number of action comedies in exotic locations. Jean Marais did one that I watched earlier this year called Man from Cocody at roughly the same time. That was filmed in Côte d'Ivoire. Marais' movie also has some of Remy Julien's first car stunts. The French were really making this kind of film a lot better than the Americans were at the time. And it is just a joy to rewatch. And Belmondo is one of the unsung heroes of action cinema. In Saturday's video, I'll be covering 1965 to 1969. There are some interesting movies there. We'll be doing some American ones because for me, American cinema didn't really start reflecting the times of the 1960s until around 1965 or so. Before that, it was still the 1950s in the way that mainstream American cinema approached the world. So anyway, thank you very much for watching. If you like this video, please consider subscribing, hitting the notification bell and giving it a thumbs up. Let me know which movies you think from the first half of the 1960s really reflect the style of the times, because I'm sure there are ones I haven't thought of, and I'm sure there are ones that I'm going to watch after you tell me about them. You can also support the channel by going to patreon.com/paleocinema and donating a little money towards the cost of the channel. Look after yourselves. Watch some good movies. Watch some bad movies. Watch some off-kilter 1960s movies. And I'll catch you next time.